Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Oner Podcast, the podcast where we break down and review films all in one big, long, unbroken take. I'm Austin Archer, and with me, as always, is my childhood next-door neighbor and lifelong best friend.
Kramer, England.
And this one was a big one for us growing up. I think,
Oh, it
yeah,
was huge. It was okay. It was a big one for everybody growing up.
yeah.
And all the videos I watch and everything that I look at and just like thinking and reminiscing back to it, like why were these so big?
Listen, I said this last week when we were talking about maybe doing this,
Yeah.
and I was wondering what the rewatch would be like for me. But
Yeah.
I always remembered, even as a kid, being like, weirdly emotionally caught up in this
Oh,
movie. Like
totally.
it
Yeah.
it like the moments where it's supposed to get me, it got me. And
Yeah.
it's still, I just watched it today and I was like, it still kind of works as an adult. And I
Yeah.
I know that there's the nostalgia factor
Yeah.
going on,
Yeah.
but I think weirdly the filmmakers here managed to thread this little needle that's like
Yeah.
so like, and I think that the testament of how good this first movie is that we're talking about today is that like it really hasn't worked since. Like no other
Yeah.
iteration of this, maybe this most recent animated one that came out. I didn't see it, but it got
It was
good
good.
reviews.
It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the cartoons I really liked, like there was a newer one that was good, but yeah, honestly, no movie adaptation has worked since, and they've made,
Live
what, 5
action.
5, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, live a even actually, I haven't seen the animated. I didn't see the animated one, TMNT, and then so, I don't know. Anyway, it really a lot of them have not worked.
And I don't know. I think that like for me as a kid, there was something so rich about the visual world and style of this film, and it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
tattooed in my brain. When I
Oh.
watch this movie now as an adult, I remember every single little detail, like of
Oh, me too.
every shot, every like just the way that their weapons look and like when they stash them in their belt and like just like and I'm watching it now going like I still think that the production design in this movie is
Oh,
so cool. I think that the world of it is like as a little kid, the sewer, like the visualization of like these sewer pipes, the circular nature of them,
yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
not I watched the second one today, and they're not circular in the second one. They're
No.
square, and it's like cheaper. It's like it looks like they just it's everything's just like
Yeah.
cheaper and less
Yeah.
cool. And having them be circular and like their little hideout is cool. And the way they get the pizza from the pizza guy through the grate and like
Yeah.
all the just them on the skateboards and these suits, as much as like you can criticize the way that the mouths move or whatever, there's a lot of mobility that the actors in these suits get out of, like they're able to like do a lot. And I don't know.
The suits play, man. The
Yeah.
suits look really, really good. I mean, honestly, you gotta commend them for making Ninja Turtle suits. Like, it looks so much better than the CGI. Like, granted, I have not seen the movies, the 2014 and 2016 or whenever they made them, those Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies. But looking at the trailers, I'm like, nah, man, they don't. That's those aren't don't look like the turtles that I know. Like the
Yeah.
suits, just like they look so good. And yes, I understand that the mouths move kind of funny, but it also like gives it an endearing quality.
Yeah, we were kinda raised on Jim Henson. Like,
Oh yeah, totally.
we were raised on Yoda and, like, his mouth kinda being like,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
we're used to, live animatronic characters whose mouths move like animatronic characters. I don't
Well,
know.
and there's so much more life in them
Yeah.
because they are real. Like I get like not to say that CGI characters can't have life, but sometimes they don't. And these ones just like there is everything works.
What
The suits work and it helps you to get connected with those characters so much more than with some of the CGI characters.
Well, I think the difference between the way that they look in these '90s movies versus the CGI look, it's
Yeah.
like the difference between ugly Sonic and then when they redesigned it and fixed it,
Yes.
where it's like sometimes going too realistic with the look,
Yes.
that uncanny valley thing or like
Yeah.
it's a weird texture look where you're like, "Oh, I don't know, I don't really like how actually lifelike they are." It almost works better when they look more like a live action cartoon.
They
So when they
do.
when they redesign Sonic to look more like the cartoon from the game, the movie plays better that way, and we just sort of buy into the world of the movie better. And these suits that they used in the 90s, they looked like live action cartoon characters.
Yeah.
Eh, yeah,
The teeth are big,
yeah,
and they're like they have, I mean, it doesn't look like a turtle, but it just the way it looks, like they have those snouts
mhm.
and they have the big white teeth. And that I love I thought the exact same thing. Like these look like live action cartoons, which makes that it's so much more believable, and you kind of suspend your disbelief. Like, yeah, there's no way that these things would be real, but there's this realism to them. And obviously they are tangible suits, and they do a good job. And just like you said with Sonic, like I can relate so much more to the Sonic that they used rather than ugly Sonic. Like the
Yeah.
ugly Sonic is like, what are you doing? Like why are you making it look that way? Just like make it look cartoonish. We're I'm able to relate to that so much more because they can be so much more expressive.
Here's my question watching this movie, because we talked a little bit about this last week.
Yeah.
You talked about how, like, the guys that came up with this concept,
Yeah.
of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that apparently the origin story is that they were, like, stoned or something, and they
Yeah.
were just like,
Yeah.
"What if," and
Yeah.
it does sound like that. My question is, was it a cartoon or a comic strip first before
Yeah.
it was a movie?
It
Because
was.
watching this movie, you can feel that, like, thing where, like, when April O'Neil first steps outside in her yellow coat, which we only get the yellow coat for a little bit of the film,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
first time we see her in that yellow coat, it feels like something that jumped off of a comic
Yep.
book page.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, surely the comic must have existed first, because the characters, the suits that they built just look like live action renderings of the cartoon versions of those characters.
They
And
do.
I was like, did the movie happen first and then they made like the Saturday morning cartoon, or was it a comic strip first and then
Yeah, it was a comic book, it was a comic strip, and the
Mhm.
comic was actually pretty dark. Like, it also, like, it was more the tone was a little bit more
Uh,
adult, I guess.
yeah.
Um, but, it was also, like, black and white, or it wasn't in color, so they just kinda had, like, those, and then they made the animation. So in 1987, that's when they made the actual show, and I think it went to 1989, and then they made the movie. So it went comic book, animated series, and then movie. But I think
Okay.
the movie is the one, as far as I'm concerned, the movie is the one that really opened the floodgates.
It lifted the Ninja Turtles brand into
Yeah.
like the thing that was iconic for an entire generation. For our
Yes.
any
Yeah.
boys, especially of our generation, like, you remember the mask that you could buy that had like the little plastic turtle face, and it would have
Yeah.
like a I yeah,
Yeah.
loved that. Like,
Oh yeah.
loved,
Yeah.
putting on a little Ninja Turtles mask.
Yeah.
Um But yeah, so that makes sense to me, actually, that the original black and white comic strip was a little bit more dark or maybe adult
Yeah.
themed, and then they made a children's cartoon that was certainly more lighthearted. And that's what I actually think works about this movie, is there's a balance to what's going on in this movie. There's a really nice balance between tones that feel grounded and like
Yes.
believable, and tones that feel really heightened and cartoonish, and they
Yes.
have just enough of each that they work together and they don't feel like they clash.
Yes.
And it's I mean, it's kind of, and again, like I talked, it's a threading the needle thing, because I we- I grew up liking 1 and 2 a lot, and I even as a
Yeah.
kid knew that 3 wasn't very good, but I
Yeah.
liked
Yeah.
1
We
and
all
2 a
did.
lot.
Yeah.
But I got curious and I watched Secret of the Ooze right after I watched this, and Secret of the Ooze is a much worse film, and it's
Yeah.
really interesting because it's a year later. It's like the next year, Secret of the Ooze came out, and this movie was a big hit, and it's weird because, like, nobody comes back. Like,
Yeah.
nobody in the principal
Yeah.
cast comes back. It's a new director, it's a new screenwriter, and what Secret of the Ooze doesn't get right is that balance. Secret of the Ooze
Yeah. Yeah.
is like 95% cartoonish and
Yeah.
silly, and to the point that it's like obnoxious and annoying, and the jokes aren't landing and they're not funny. And then has a little bit of like pathos for the characters, but it's mostly I mean, there's the whole sequence in Secret of the Ooze when like they go into the club with Vanilla Ice and Vanilla Ice sings the Go Ninja Go song.
Go ninja, go. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just
So bad.
it's just absurd, and, like, Super
Yeah.
Shredder looks and Shredder just turns into, like, a really silly character in
Yeah.
Secret of the Ooze, and Shredder in the first movie is actually, like, a really
Yeah.
I love the whole way that they do the entire Foot Clan. They feel like a really imposing force in the first movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing about this. This happens a lot. So this movie, what they did, like you were talking about, they very much did a good job of making this balanced.
Mhm,
They have enough darkness, but they have also enough lightness to make things, a little campy and a little bit lighthearted, right? But then you get Raphael, who gets really beaten up really bad, and they were able to find that balance, but they took it seriously.
and
Okay,
he
so
and
this,
he says "damn" a lot.
yeah, he does.
I remember as a kid, I was like, "This movie's cool because like, he
Yeah,
says
he
"damn."
swears like, yeah, man, he's
Yeah.
he's he's hardcore.
He says
Yeah,
it like 6 times in the movie. He's always
yeah,
like, "Oh, damn."
yeah, and it's like such a
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
but so they took this movie seriously and they
Yeah.
did a good job of balancing everything. Now, the problem is after this type of success, um, a lot of times you'll see this in many, many franchises. They go way more kid friendly to the point of being like a Saturday morning cartoon. So this one especially. So in Secret of the Ooze, they couldn't use their weapons. So they
Right.
don't use their weapons at all.
They
And
I didn't even think about that. They literally don't.
yeah, they,
I
they're on
Yeah.
them all the time, but they never use them.
Yeah.
But they could like punch, like and like so this movie they use their weapons. I mean, they don't, use them horribly or a
It's not
lot,
like
but
Raphael's stabbing a guy in the neck with
no.
his sai, you
No.
know? Yeah.
No. But like so and then after that, like it was like they couldn't use their weapons, which is really, really dumb. And you see this with Batman, like Batman 89, which came out the year before, was also very dark. They took it very, very seriously. And then progressively, I mean, 2 was a different type of movie, but
Mhm.
then, Batman Forever and Batman and Robin just became a way to sell toys
Right.
rather than trying to make a good movie. And it's like, how do people so many times just completely miss what made a movie so good?
Well,
Like,
what's so weird about this to me is how fast it was because the
yeah,
movie was a big hit,
it
and
was,
what they had
yeah.
do you would think that the move for New Line would be like, "Hey, get the same team back, same director, same screenwriter, same cast, like, everything was working for us. Let's see if we can get that winning formula again," and it's so weird to me to watch a movie and be like, this came out a year later, and the studio's like, the studio, whatever idea they pitched was so bad that everyone in the principal cast was like, "No, thanks." Was just like,
Yeah.
I'm good. No, thank you."
Yeah.
And, like, that's crazy, and that, like,
Yeah.
even the director, that everyone was like, "No, thanks. You can get a different team," and that
Yeah.
they just went ahead with it. Like, that to me is like like, usually you'll see something like that after the first one doesn't quite
Yeah.
work, but it's like the reason why this spawned a franchise and continues to have movies be made to this day is because this first one was kind of a runaway hit. It was a big cultural moment.
It was one of the most, well, it was the highest grossing independent movie of the time until Blair Witch Project came out.
Wow.
And I mean, they only made it for $13.5 million, and it made over $200 million at the box office, worldwide.
I think that's the thing about this movie that I like too, even as an adult, is it does have that feeling of being like a passionate
Yeah.
work of like the set pieces aren't huge or massive, but
No.
everything that they do have is really well realized and
Yeah.
really well, like the cinematography's good,
Yeah.
and they know how to light the suits to make sure that you're not seeing the seams in the neck and stuff like that. And again, in the second one, it's like that all goes out the window. It's like I'm seeing like weird little like they're just
Yeah.
taking
Yeah.
angles on the suits that I'm like, you guys aren't picking the angles that are making these suits play the best way. Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
I was watching this movie going like, they're really paying attention to lighting and angles on these turtles to make them
Yeah.
feel as real as possible.
Yeah.
And but the whole movie kind of had that feeling of like everything felt kind of like real and lived in, and they cast actors that felt grounded. Because even
Yeah.
like the second one, this kid that's the pizza delivery kid, that
Yeah.
like he's
Yeah.
just, I mean, the kid's good at karate, and he was good in surf. You know, he
Oh,
had a
yes.
little he had a
Surf
surf
Ninja.
ninjas. He had a little career there in the
Yeah,
90s because
yeah.
he was
That guy.
he was really good at doing kicks and stuff, but he is a terrible actor. And you think about like the difference between Danny and him, because
Uh-huh.
Danny actually is like, it's a pretty grounded character, and the performance is pretty grounded and
Yeah.
feels
Yeah.
kind of serious. And the Danny storyline in this first movie is like, I remember even as a kid being like kind of emotionally caught up in the
Yeah,
story
yeah.
between Danny and his dad.
Yeah.
And I felt like Danny's performance, even watching it today, was like, this kid's performance holds up, and it's like
Yeah.
it's solid. But then this kid in the second movie is like, it's so over the top, it's so corny. Yeah. And that's, I don't know. It's just like the movie loses any sense of balance. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's they did a great job with this. So,
I think it's crazy to watch it and just be like, this shouldn't work. This
yeah.
should not, it shouldn't work this well. And there's definitely things to criticize about it, but it's like, of
Yeah.
course there are. It's insane that this movie works at all.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I really enjoyed watching this again.
Yeah,
And
it was a
then
lot of fun.
and watching the second one just confirmed to me that like, no, that was actually good, because this is bad. And, you know, and it's not just like nostalgia that makes me